Welcome to the pitch interview with Wilfried Ehrmann. Wilfried was not just one of our keynote speakers, he is one of the main organizers of the conference and in charge of putting together the program for the keynotes. So, Wilfried, I was curious of what were the underlying ideas and considerations for you putting together this series of lectures at the CHIC 2017.
Well, my basic intention was to have a mixture between more scientifically oriented lectures with new approaches in the breathwork field and more inspirational lectures also, of course, from the field of breathwork, because I also see that the participants who come to a conference like that have this mixture inside of themselves, and also some people have more interest focused on the cognitive and others more on the motivational and emotional side. And I wanted also to have a mixture between men and women, which worked out quite well, and also having a mixture between new people who never were to a conference like that, and also elders of the whole Breathwork Foundation who never had the chance to be on stage or who have long knowledge in and experience with working with the breath for themselves and with clients.
Well, there's a lot of new things at this conference, and our conversation has a very nice new element as well. We have had lots of conversations in the past, but for the first time we are talking in English. It's our first conversation in English. Yes. So, Wilfried, you're involved in teaching breathwork. You're involved in doing research around breathwork. So I want to talk a little bit about both fields.
Okay.
And you are running a breathwork training, 2 to 3 or more years professional breathwork training. So you have a lot of experience in teaching breathwork. And I have been one of your students. I'm one of the graduates from this program. And I wonder, because here there's a lot of breathwork professionals, and breathwork is taught in so many different ways. I wonder where you see which should be the main directions we are going to, because there is also what I see is that breathwork is making its way into universities for applied sciences. For example, we had Peter Litchfield here, who is the president of one of such universities for applied sciences. Do you think this is something that the teaching of an important development in the teaching of breathwork, or how do you think? What do you think? What is the way to teach breathwork?
Well, teaching breathwork basically means to help people who are interested in learning breathwork techniques for the use with clients to find a good way how they learn the skills that are required, learn the personal maturity that is needed, and learn a level of also practical knowledge and theoretical knowledge. In some, this is it's a high amount of things to learn and to study, and So I also think it's important to stay connected with the development and do advanced training even after completion of a certification training as we offer them. But I see the main focus of a training like that to have the personal stability and safety, to grant a space for clients in which they can open up and experience their inside, so that they can be guided through an inner process which then can become fruitful and have beneficial results for the person in his or her personal development. So I think the training is basically about personal qualities, about inner development, acquiring the inner safety, the security, and the self-esteem, self-trust qualities like that which are needed, so that breathwork sessions give the safe framework a client needs to explore hidden sides of his own psyche. And theory is of good help and of necessity, but it's somehow on a second or third range of things required.
So for you, it's not so important at which, like I was talking about, these universities of applied sciences, where the training takes place or how. Because maybe one aspect could also be, okay, how to get more recognition for breathwork practitioners in the way that they can show that they have done some programming that is like, okay, that comes with the reputation of an institution.
Yeah, right. Well, this is why we also have formed an association a long time ago to back up a training with a body of experienced teachers, of knowledge, of publications. We also have in our association periodical and publications, and also my writing should serve this purpose, to give a good reputation to the work, and also to include scientific studies as good as we can. And of course, the more studies that come out and become publicized and become more popular, the better for the whole movement, because we can find out of many of the studies this importance of breath awareness and conscious breathing for many areas of one's own development or one's own health.
Let's move on to the research, because you're very actively in publishing and writing about the effects of breathwork and how breathwork can help us to work with different issues and different topics and different challenges in personal growth. You have just recently published a book on coherent breathing.
Yes.
And you were touching on so many things in your lecture, in your keynote lecture, that for me is actually very difficult to choose what to talk about. But maybe we can talk a little bit about coherent breathing, since it's so prominent in your recent work. And for me, it's interesting because what Peter was advocating was that we should look at the effects of breathing on the CO2 concentration in the body. And what you're doing with your work about coherent breathing and about the autonomous nervous system is that we should be more aware and should be more clear about the effects of breathing on our nervous system, on the respiratory sinus arrhythmia, on our sympathicus and our parasympathicus. Do you think this is like a whole organic research program that we should work with all these aspects, and or is it just necessary to learn some techniques which support certain effects like coherent breathing?
I think everything has to be included, and that's the nature of science, that's the nature of exploration, that's the nature of growth, that it embraces more and more approaches, areas, and accesses to our inside world, which we are talking about here, with by the way of breathing and by the way of the conscious breath. As far as CO2 is concerned, this is not the main objective of coherent breathing, but as you said, it's the nervous system and its connection to the circulatory system, the heart rate variability and parameters like that. And still I would see a connection, which I cannot prove yet, but it's more like an idea or a guess I have, that by relaxing the breathing and empowering the parasympathetic nervous system, which is one of the aims of coherent breathing, changes in habits could happen on this subconscious level, which inhibit the breathing in a way so that the CO2 level in the blood gets compromised, so that there's an indirect effect that coherent breathing can have on the centers in the brain that control the breathing in a dysfunctional way due to unconsciously adapted habits of behavior. That's as far as I understood Peter Litchfield's approach.
Yeah. You were just giving a workshop on coherent breathing, 2 hours workshop, and you're arguing that one of the advantages of coherent breathing is that it can be learned very quickly, it can be applied by everybody, and it's very easy to share it and to explain how it works. Do you think it's necessary to work more in depth with these tools so people can get more aware of the ways their autonomous nervous system and their breath is related, and how this can be done?
I'm not sure if I got your question right now, but I think maybe you can.
Yeah, the question was like, okay, is there more to coherent breathing than just the things you can teach very quickly? So how can we work with maybe, is it necessary to focus on personal aspects? Maybe someone has a stronger aspect on the sympathicus, someone else has a stronger emphasis, or the parasympathicus is predominant in the nervous system. So
I understand. I think as with every technique, the real challenge is to work with individual clients, because everybody has a different setup, everybody has different approaches and experiences. Also a story of traumatization which plays a role in our inner world, and especially has impact on the way we breathe. So teaching the technique is easy, but it's important to be aware that every person has this different way of approach. So for instance, someone is breathing very rapidly and comes into stress when he would have to breathe in a slow pace. So how to find a way to train this person to slowly elong the length of breath over time, so that this person then come into a range of breathing frequency which is beneficial in the viewpoint of coherent breathing and also measurable in HRV, heart rate variability parameters. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of things to consider when people try to learn this technique. But when you have understood the principles of it and have understood the way it should be practiced and trained, then it's not so difficult to consult people who have different difficulties with learning this technique.
So it's like we are having a very nice, we're getting a very nice overview or very nice insights about the physiology of breathing at this conference,
yes,
which I very much appreciate, even though there might be some things that have not been explored in how these different approaches overlap or where they contradict, or how to move on and move forward between those seemingly contradictions or different perceptions of how to properly breathe and what is correct breathing or what is dysfunctional or what is functional. Yeah. I'm looking forward to this course and to future research around these areas. Thank you, Wilfried, very much for this speech interview. Thank you very much for putting this interesting series of lectures together. Yes. Thank you for putting this conference together. Yes. And thanks for sharing your work with us in this beautiful way.
With pleasure, with pleasure. And it was also nice to have like a paradoxical framework for this, because in my language there's a pear and not a peach, but that makes it all more funny.
We had a peach interview. I was saying peach. Oh my God! Welcome to the pear interview. We have to start it all over again. No, we don't have the time for that because we have to attend the last of our keynote lectures, which is coming up very soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Wilfried.